Well, hello, Gene.
Hello, Mike.
Well, thanks a bunch for doing this interview. It's for the Accessible Home Summit of Experts, and it really means a lot to me. I appreciate it. Our audience is going to get a whole bunch of stuff from you, so they're going to have to buckle in and get ready to go. So, folks, I want you to meet Gene Leber. Gene is the owner of the Leber Family Foundation. It's a nonprofit private foundation that works solely with other 501c3 nonprofits to assist in removing barriers one project at a time. Gene's also the president of Liberty Access Foundation, which is a nonprofit dedicated to helping those with physical challenges. Gene has projects that assist communities in removing barriers that prevent all individuals that give the opportunity to have individuals complete access to their communities. He's specialized in accessible playground design and construction and is an expert on universal design and housing. So, Gene, as you know, the object of these interviews is to bring to light the huge need of the many with physical challenges. And because of your expertise in many areas of business and your skill in helping others attain their goals, folks, I can think of nobody better than to enlighten you as to, and to teach you all kinds of information that it's taken him a long time to both understand and implement, and he's willing to share. So what do you say, Gene? You want to get the show on the road?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. I've been a person with a disability now for 42 years. I was injured when I was 20 years old, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't know a single person with a disability at that point of my injury. So when I became disabled, it was the learning process for me from the ground up. Luckily, I was at a point where I was wanting to go to college, but my injury derailed that process until I was able to figure out that there was a university in Ohio that I am from Dayton, Ohio, but I grew up in Sandusky, Ohio, near Cedar Point, for a reference. But I attended Wright State University for the main reason is that the university was very accommodating to persons with disabilities. One of the great features of the university was an underground tunnel system that allowed individuals with disabilities to go from class to class in this tunnel system throughout the winter. So we were lucky that we didn't have to fight the bad weather outside, and we could attend all of our classes by going from one section of the tunnel to another. Though my education, Wright State also met my educational goals while attending there also. But that was one of the things that also introduced me to a lot of individuals with disabilities. Being a nationally accredited university that serves a lot of different individuals with disabilities, it was, for me, was an opportunity to learn about my disability and others' disabilities, and also to kind of grow up in understanding what my disability means to me and the opportunities that allowed me to see the world from a disabled standpoint. So that for me was the perfect timing to learn, get an education, and then also learn about the disability world.
So you got involved with everything you just said, and what inspired you? What really was that driving force to get you to help others with physical challenges?
Well, after I graduated from Wright State University, I went to work for a medical device company that also made equipment for individuals with disabilities to help them become healthier. And that was a great time in my life, a product that I participated in the research of the equipment, and the benefits, health benefits I received from that was tremendous. Unfortunately, that company was unable to secure Medicare insurance. And so without the Medicare insurance, the majority of the population that could really benefit from that type of equipment was not insurable. And so, or I shouldn't say not insurable, I should say that Medicare wasn't approving that type of equipment. So what led me to then look for other employment was the opportunity to become an executive director of a center for independent living, which completely opened up my eyes to how, because centers for independent living are centers that work strictly with individuals with disabilities. And when I say strictly with individuals with disabilities, my staff had to be 50% persons with disabilities, and so did my board of directors had to be persons with disabilities, 50%. So it opened my eyes to answer your question about how did I find myself learning about different types of different disabilities and my passion for it. Because as a person who acquired my disability, I was now introduced and thrown into the world of meeting people who were born with disabilities. Big difference. So it intrigued me. I wanted to know what it was like to grow up as a person with a disability. And boy, my eyes were opened to how individuals who are born with a disability and how their life was from the time they were born until they reached the age of 18 years old.
Mentally, Jane, and emotionally in that situation, because you went through it when you were completely healthy, and you had to transition into the life you now have, or at that time had to learn how to adjust to. What's the difference in the psychological makeup from a person that was born with it versus what you had to go through?
Well, what I discovered is that with a person who was born with a disability, the mindset was that they always look to be taken care of. They were not taught, majority of them were not taught how to be independent, how to be their own advocate, because the parents did it for them. For whatever reasons the parents had, you know, a lot of the young men and women that who came through my center and then eventually end up working for me, I noticed this huge difference of that when they had to learn life skills that they weren't taught because they were always taken care of. And so it was a big eye opener for me to try to understand the mindset of those individuals with disabilities. Whereas with me, not having a disability till I was 20 years old, I was already independent. I was already doing things that I was making my own decisions and out and about and doing a job that I could do, you know, with my total without physical disabilities. So it was a big eye opener as far as, you know, seeing a population that were more of a dependent instead of an independent.
Well, you know, it's really interesting when I started doing this and doing especially the retrofits on the homes, and I would get jobs through the mobility companies and Medicaid and workman's comp and veterans work. And what astounded me in general, and I didn't really put the two pieces of the puzzle together until you just said it, was that the attitude of people that just had their disability happen was night and day different than the person that was born with it. And, you know, not being in your shoes, I don't know the devastation that it took, that immediate transition that you had to go through. But I could see the independent concept come to light. You know, people that just a month ago had that scenario happen to them, all of a sudden now that, yeah, oh, woe was me, got over really quickly. And, you know, now they're on the road back because that's the kind of mindset they have. I've been extremely impressed by seeing the attitudes in general of people like that.
Sure.
Pretty interesting stuff. I want to, I really love this. It's definitely changed my life. I'm going to tell you that.
I'm
Okay.
sure it has. It changed my life. It changed my life to, from wanting to understand what the difference was. And until I became a director of a Center for Independent Living, I would have never had that experience of understanding.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. Well, I know that you founded the Leber Family Foundation. Can you give us a little insight as to why you started that and what it's all about?
Yes, I've been approached throughout my time when I was executive director of the Center for Independent Living that these school playgrounds and community playgrounds were not accessible. They were not inclusive. You go to a community park playground, and the flooring were chips or wood chips. And then what I discovered when I started having my own children and I started taking my children to the park, I could not participate with my children on the playground system. There was no way to get around the system, around the playground. That if my child would have gotten hurt, I couldn't even get to it. So that was an eye opener. And so I remember a conversation I had with some individuals about how can we make the playground systems in our community more accessible. Well, it just so happens when I was a director of the Center for Independent Living, I was selected as a committee member during the ADA process and the writing of the Playground Inclusive Act and also the Airline Aviation Act. And I was also one of the few chosen ones to actually receive training in Washington, D.C. on the Americans with Disabilities Act. So when they asked me to be on a committee, I picked the playground committee because I wanted to learn as much about it as I possibly could. I never knew that I would eventually, quit my job as the director of independent living and decide to build playgrounds. But it did. It happened. It had to happen. So, in looking at the situation, I took a year to just talk to people, talk to organizations, talk to individuals. I had as I said earlier in my conversation, getting to know a lot of parents with children who were born with disabilities. And then, of course, working along side by side with people who were born with disabilities, I went to them. I wanted to know when they were growing up, what could they not do at a playground system? And they all told me really nothing. So I started a research group, a think tank within the different individual groups. I wanted to get my input from all of them. So I had individuals who were blind, people who were deaf, people who had cerebral palsy, people who had other disabilities, and we started brainstorming about what would a playground system look like if it was accessible. So once we started putting that brainstorm together, we started looking at developing an accessible playground. And so from there, we did our first accessible, inclusive playground in a playground system in downtown Dayton, Ohio. And one of the things that we decided to do as a foundation was to look at where are these playgrounds mostly needed. And what we discovered was that they were mostly needed in underserved areas. Unfortunately, a lot of individuals who are born with disabilities do actually live in a low-income area. And so what we discovered was by looking in underserved areas and looking at the population that lived there, we found there was a good majority of individuals with disabilities that lived in those communities. So we decided that's okay, that's going to be our criteria. We're going to put playground systems in underserved areas, and we're going to make these playgrounds accessible for everyone, inclusive for anyone. So the first thing from my experience with my kids was we need a flooring that everyone could get around. So it just so happened at that time, the industry started using ground up tires as a surface. And once we discovered that that surface was soft, easy to roll over top of, and if a child fell, they wouldn't get seriously injured. So that was our first idea. It's like, this works. Then from there it was, okay, how can we make a playground system that is inclusive? And our ideal from that was, we want to be able to bring children with disabilities and children without disabilities to be able to play together. So we had to come up with ideas of how do we design equipment that allows for that interaction. And so what we decided to do was break it into what is known today as pods. Okay. And one of the cool things about the pods was we would develop pods that had a theme to it, a theme that would incorporate, say, maybe a child's interest in being a fireman. So we would develop a firehouse pod. And in that firehouse pod, we would put, the sirens and the steering wheels of a ambulance and a fire truck. And so that would be the interest of both groups, both children with and without disabilities. So that's how we thought, well, yeah, that's going to do it. That's going to bring that group together. And how we ended up doing that was we ramped every pod in a connection with the ramp. So you could go from one pod to the next pod to the next pod by an easy access ramp. So if you wanted to go, say, from the fire station pod over to the hospital pod, which then would have all kinds of things that you would see inside of a hospital, then you could easily do that from one pod to the other. And then our idea came, okay, how can we get the city excited about doing these playgrounds? So the idea that we came up with there was, why don't we make a pod that talks about the city itself? Okay, what is this city known for? And in Dayton, Ohio, the city was known for the Wright brothers. So one of the things that we decided to do was to make a pod that played homage to the Wright brothers. We took the airplane, we took the bicycles, because that's how they all started. The Wright brothers had a bicycle shop, and so we researched and developed a prototype bicycle that looked just like the very first one the Wright brothers developed. And then from there, we developed the airplane that was put on top of the pod to symbolize how the first airplane looked. So then we went on and said, okay, what else is this city known for? Well, at that time, it was Lawrence Dunbar, who was a national recognized poet from Dayton, Ohio. So we developed a pod with the history of Lawrence Dunbar and put his writings in there. And so we created that pod. And then okay, so how do we tie in all disabilities? So then what we did was we decided, okay, let's make panels. We'll make a panel that shows the alphabet of individuals who are blind. So you can go up to this panel and you can see, and you can touch a dot that recognizes A. You can touch a dot that recognizes C. And you can put your finger up there and see how an individual who is blind reads Braille. Okay. And then we decide, okay, that's a group we can recognize. And then we thought, okay, let's put up the different sign languages. and show what that show what this means, or this means, or this means, for sign language. And we would label that underneath what the word or what the sign said. So once we started doing that, we start capturing a lot of people's attention. And so then it just grew from there. That cities recognized our work and saw that this was an idea that not only brought inclusion and also brought the history to a underserved area, which was, it was an idea that just took off.
It's as good as it gets right there. That's really good. And I knew the story before I talked to you, but every time I hear this, it's like unbelievable. You guys you did something special. All right, bud. So if you were to offer your assistance to people with challenges, what would that be something that you'd be willing to participate in?
Oh, absolutely. With all the years that I've been, with my education and my work history and then living with a disability day in and day out, I have learned so much of, from trial and error to, trying this and this works and trying that it doesn't work, that I have found a lot of good ideas, and I've made a lot of contacts over the years that I can pretty much steer people towards, a service or a something that I've tried out personally to assist them in almost anything that they may be looking for.
That's awesome. Okay, now this is going to be kind of the last subject I touch on, and it's your beautiful house. Now, as you describe to everybody out there how you design the house and universal design features and concepts. What does that all mean?
Well, what it means is that I wanted to create a home that was completely 100% accessible for my needs. But I didn't want to make it look like an institution. I wanted to make it look like a home. I challenge people to come into my home and look at my home and see if they think that they would not want to live there. And I have never heard anyone say no.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm one of those, but I had no clue, and I knew what I was getting into, but I couldn't see the difference. Well,
so from that, so once I started thinking about that, how I wanted to create an environment in a home that was completely accessible, I started looking at what was it that I needed. I needed certain things for my disability, but yet I wanted to make things that I had learned over the years about banging. For example, banging. Being in a chair is a piece of instrument. It makes holes in walls. If you're going to bang into a wall, with a wheelchair that is made of metal, you're going to put a dent in your wall. So one of the things to help prevent doing that, I decided that I would bring tile up a couple of inches off the floor, and it would be where my wheelchair, the front of my wheelchair would be where it would bang into a wall, would now be banging into tile. Therefore, I wouldn't be creating holes in my walls. And one of the other thing that I discovered by living in a home with smaller doorways was that the frames of my doors would be trashed because the chair would be banging into the side railings around the woodwork around the doors. So creating pocket doors was an easy fix for that situation. Plus, it gave me the full opening of the door. So creating pocket doors, bringing tile up along the walls, and then deciding You know, if you're going to cook in your house, you should probably be able to get underneath your stove. And if you're going to do dishes, you probably should be able to get underneath your sink. You know, those to me became simple solutions. And then from there, you know, and everybody, I've always said this, and I've said this to you several times, Mike, is there are two options, there are two things, there are the two most important things of a wheelchair accessible home or an accessible home is you need to be able to get in and out, and you need to be able to go to the bathroom. So my priorities has always been have a zero entrance going into your home, and then having a bathroom then which you can do a 360 turnaround inside that room, and then have a shower that you can take your wheelchair into and be able to transfer onto any piece of equipment, or even use the wheelchair itself to take a shower and to access the toilet. Those are the two most important things when it comes to designing a universal accessible home. And from there, just get creative. You know, I have found, and I've shown you and others, the simple, cost-efficient products that are out there that can make your home completely accessible. One of the things I have in all of my cabinets is a pull-down rack that brings my dishes to me. Therefore, I don't have to worry about asking someone to, hey, can you get that plate on the second shelf for me? Because these simple pull-down racks bring all the dishes right to me. So there are simple products out there that and they're cost efficient, that can really turn a home into a really easy, accessible home.
Well, folks, I got to tell you that I've been in Gene's house, as we've mentioned, and it's remarkable. I got to tell them a quick story, Gene. You showed me you're on a canal, and you've got a party boat essentially. And that party boat, Gene designed a zero entry step onto his party boat, which is the same principle as getting into his house, which is zero step. And well, the first time I saw that thing, I said, that is just unbelievable. Because now people in chairs can access your party boat. It's a way for them to get out in the water without having to go through all the craziness of getting out of their chair and climbing in and everything else. This is tremendous. So congratulations on that too, man.
Well, you know, to that point, Mike, one thing I've also learned over the years is that person, that individual who lives in that world of disability, lives in that wheelchair, they are the ones that day in and day out, I know that what we need and what we need to live on a daily basis.
Well, it's been great. This has been education, I know, for everybody listening, no question. And I want those to understand that through Gene, what he's given you here today is a video interview, and you can access this forever. What's called an all access pass, and it'll give you a chance to listen. We've got the audio, we'll have the PDF, and we've got the visual interview here that you can take a look at. Gene's information, which Gene, can you give somebody a way to contact you?
Yeah, one of the best ways to contact me is probably through my email, which is geneleb55@gmail.com. And that is GENELEB as in boy 55@gmail.com.
So what's going to happen is you're going to get those videos and the audio, PDF, etc. And also Gene's going to have a page in this whole summit, which will allow you to, should he decide to post anything in there or whatever type of thing that he wants to put in, he will do that and you will have access to that. So because you've been so kind, Gene, we really want to thank you. It's been enlightening and a lot of fun doing this with you. The all access pass is going to get you whatever Gene needs, and it's the accessible home summit of experts. with an expert like Gene. And thanks, bud. We appreciate it all.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll talk. Okay.
All righty.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.